Hey everybody, good to see you back at the Vision Possible website and YouTube channel, wherever you're tuning in from this. We're excited to have you guys with us, and if you guys have been following, we're doing these weekly teachings. My name's Ryan Haley, and last week I talked about what I call finding your sweet spot, and that is where you're going to get well paid to do what you love most and do best. So if you haven't seen that, I would recommend that you check out that video on the Vision Possible YouTube channel. It's called Finding Your Sweet Spot Part 1. It's got my name, Ryan Haley, and that will give you a little bit of the background for what we were talking about before. And I want to build on that this week because one of the things that I talked about using my own personal examples that I found in my sweet spot was this kind of intersection between working with people and working with numbers, doing a combination of financial planning and personal coaching. And just to give a really broad overview of what we talked about last week, the sweet spot in my definition of it is you think about 4 different circles that are all overlapping. It's the intersection of those 4 circles. And those 4 circles are your deepest passion, what makes you come alive, what gets your blood flowing, what you're excited about, your deepest pain, which is kind of the story of your struggle and the wounds and difficulties you've overcome in life. Then it's your greatest strength, which we really emphasize that it's a natural strength or ability, something you're naturally very good at, or an area that you naturally excel in, that's not hard for you to be excellent and productive. And then lastly, it's your greatest service, which is the value or benefit that you provide to other people. So all those individually are really powerful in and of themselves, but when you have something that you're deeply passionate about, and you're also, you've got a deep sense of empathy and compassion because that's a deep point of pain for you, and at the same time, it's overlapping a natural strength that you have that you're naturally good at, then usually that's going to be the place where you add the most service or value and benefit to other people. And we talked about how on a practical level, when you're doing what you love most and do best, you're probably going to be adding the most value to other people. And particularly for those of us in business, but even if you're an employee in the marketplace, you know that value is ultimately what people are paying you for. The compensation is tied to value. It's not necessarily your resume, your education, your background, or whatever that, obviously plays a role. But at the end of the day, they're just interested in how you can improve their life and make them better. So we talked about how when you start doing this deep dive of going through this sweet spot exercise, and if you haven't checked this out, I'd encourage you to go to abetterwaypodcast.com/sweet-spot. I've got an interactive exercise that you can go through this whole thing. But again, that's abetterwaypodcast.com/sweet-spot. And you'll see that there for free. You can go through that. So, that is a lifelong process, and it can take years. It certainly has for me to really narrow down exactly the middle of that sweet spot. But once you do, what's great about it is that, again, if you're doing what you naturally love more than anything in the world, and you're naturally brilliant at it, then odds are you're going to be adding a lot of value and you're going to be well compensated because of that. So that's what I kind of want to segue into today, because again, all 5 of us that are doing this, Carly, Butch, Julieann, Nathaniel, and myself, we all have similar things that we're talking about, but we come at it from different angles. And so I know that Nathaniel's doing a very similar kind of series of teachings right now called Convergence. That's what he calls it. And we all have different ways that we can add value and kind of express those same ideas. But where I'm going to really start focusing is on the financial planning side and just personal finance and budgeting, getting to a point of financial freedom so that you are unhindered to fulfill your purpose, achieve your vision, and step into your calling, really. So what's interesting about this, though, is that I started off officially doing coaching as part of a Better Way, as part of a paid coaching model. And what I found with a lot of the clients that I worked with was almost inevitably it came to finances as being a huge part of what we're going to work on for their plan. Because if you don't have the financial freedom to do what you want to do, then it's going to just stay a pipe dream, a vision that you aren't able to practically take action on. Not that necessarily finances have to hold you back, but what I found is for most people that are really serious about, getting to that point of finding and operating from their sweet spot, they really need kind of for that to be a consuming full-time thing. Now, that doesn't have to be the case. You could very well do it any number of ways. But one way or the other, I just found that as a coach, many times it came to personal finances and investments and coming up with the strategy and a plan to get people to a point of financial freedom so that they had the time and the energy to do what makes them come alive. So that was just fine with me because, as I said in the last video, I love numbers and I love people, and putting those two things together is great. So for me, I've found that why I'm so passionate about financial planning is, just God's just given me a gift for that. I'm just happy as a clam running numbers on spreadsheets and doing financial projections and all this kind of stuff. But I've also seen how it has such a direct connection to what we're talking about when it comes to high level vision and heart and purpose, that and the very detailed planning and execution that comes with finances and getting to that point of freedom there's a really tight connection between those two. So that's where I'm kind of settling into my sweet spot, is as a financial planner and personal coach. And I don't necessarily do both of those all the time with the same client. I certainly like to, but they are separate businesses. But I see that there's so much synergy and connection between them that can go either way. So that's what I kind of want to segue into is, somebody once asked me a question that I will never forget. I was at Charis Bible College a couple years ago, and, of course, we're all really excited, going to Bible college full time. Everybody's, on fire for the Lord. And somebody asked, how many of you guys are ready, able, and willing to go wherever God calls you, for your life calling? And, everybody raised their hands. And he's like, how many of you right now, if God told you to move to Africa and you didn't have a job or any other income, how many of you guys would have the financial freedom to actually be able to do that? And I think mine was one of maybe 2 hands up in the whole class. And that struck me because, as well-intentioned as we can be, there is a practical aspect to, making your daydream your day job, living your vision, finding your sweet spot, and doing what makes you come alive for the benefit of not only yourself, but the world around you. So with all that said, what I want to talk about is some basic personal finance stuff. I don't want to dwell too much on that because, Dave Ramsey's covered that part of it really well, just budgeting, getting out of debt or using debt responsibly, and then, just managing your cash flow and your daily budgets, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to recreate the wheel with all that kind of stuff, but I think it is important that if you are serious about achieving your vision and not just talking about it for years on end, but actually doing it, then you probably, unless you're just independently wealthy, which good for you, maybe we could have the opposite conversation in that case of when you have so much time and money, but you don't have vision, how can we use that? And that's a different conversation. But like I said, for most people, it is unfortunate that money holds them back from being able to step into their vision and their calling. So, basic financial stewardship, especially if your calling or your vision is to operate a business or, anything that involves having to steward a large amount of wealth and influence, you've got to start small. You got to master these things, in your own budget, in your own life first, before you go and try to tell other people about it. Otherwise, you're just importing or exporting your own dysfunction to them. So managing and mastering your personal finances and money is really important. If you're spending more than you're making on a consistent basis, then that's not going to work. That can get you in trouble. So again, I don't want to belabor the personal finance and budgeting piece of it. Check out Dave Ramsey or any other of programs. But what it really excites me, kind of back to this idea of the sweet spot, is I found that my sweet spot, even within financial planning, is not the, very early Dave Ramsey steps of helping people get out of, drowning in credit card debt and doing basic personal finance and budgeting. Where I really come alive where I get excited and where I think I can add the most value is when we're going from, assuming that somebody already is financially stable and now they've got excess resources and cash flow to be able to invest in things and start to build their wealth exponentially. That's where I get really excited. So I have a pretty defined niche when it comes to who I work with, both for coaching and for financial planning. So this might be a little, over the head of a lot of people. I'm going to try to make it simple, and I want to, make this accessible to everybody. But right now, I think it's more important than ever that people be stewarding their finances and their time well, because as we saw with the pandemic and COVID, you can be out of a job just like that. And I've read a study that says that the average American is unable to pay for an unexpected $400 expense, which that just blew my mind. But that is the reality for a lot of people. So what I want to talk about right now are kind of some big picture financial and economic factors at play. And then we'll go in future videos of getting to a point where we can really kind of get in more depth on how to structure a strategy around this. But generally speaking right now, we have obviously just a new administration change in the White House. We have a Democratic controlled government essentially. So we're probably almost for sure going to see much higher taxes for companies and businesses across the board. We're probably going to see higher inflation. The Federal Reserve pretty much announced that. So that could be a difficult combination for people. But one of the biggest things is in the midst of all this, right now we have the lowest interest rates I think we've ever seen, certainly in my lifetime and probably for most people's lifetime, at least this low for this long. And I don't think that's going to change. So why am I telling you all this stuff about inflation, interest rates, and taxes? Well, as the old proverbs go, for lack of vision or knowledge, my people perish. And a lot of people that I talk to when it comes to finances and just life in general, it's what they don't know that hurts them. And so for anybody who's living on a fixed income right now, whether that's, a government paycheck, if that's, savings accounts or certificates of deposit, CDs, bonds, unfortunately, you're not getting a very good return at all. In fact, it's almost zero. Anybody who's keeping, cash in their savings accounts is getting about 0% right now, maybe close to 1% in a high yield savings account for most people. And that's a double whammy because when we have, it's a triple whammy really, because when you got low interest rates, if you're dependent on that income, the yield on those investments, you're not getting much yield right now at all. And then if you consider inflation and taxes both increasing on top of that, it's basically eroding the purchasing power of the average person. And so that's not a good thing. You want to stretch your dollar as far as possible, but if your dollar is getting shrunk because every year everything is more expensive, that's what inflation is. And if taxes are increasing and the little you already have is being taken from you in greater quantities by the IRS, then it could make it a pretty difficult situation. So the good thing is, like most things in life, every crisis or challenge presents an opportunity, and every investor knows this. In fact, most of the great investors of all time, Warren Buffett, Howard Marks, a number of other people, they are usually making the vast majority of their returns and their profits in the worst possible conditions. So think back to 2008 and 2009, when most people were freaking out and selling all their stocks and their assets, their real estate. The smart money was coming in and buying it cheap. So, that's generally true in life. I find that sometimes, the greatest crises present the greatest opportunities, like I said. So in the midst of this kind of nasty brew of increasing taxes, increasing inflation, and lowering interest rates or sustained low interest rates for a long period of time, there are actually some really great strategies that can come into play with this. Now, I'm not going to go into that quite yet, but I want to just let you know there are a lot of things coming together in addition to what I've already said that present some amazing opportunities for a lot of people. But again, like I said, what I'm focusing on, the people and the strategy that I'm focusing on as a financial planner, it's really for people who they've been responsible, they're not in crisis mode. And if you are in crisis mode, that's not a condemnation. By all means, go through Dave Ramsey's course, go through whatever things that you guys have that's working for you. But like I said, that's just not my sweet spot. And I want to model what I'm talking to you guys about. So I'm not going to try to, be a round peg in a square hole, operating with a customer segment and an approach or a strategy that's not, my best. So with the people that I can work with in helping with these different factors that are coming together, specifically is a strategy that requires you to be very disciplined long-term. You don't have to be, super uptight budgeter watching every penny all the time, but you can't be financially irresponsible. You can't be trying to, get rich quick or overnight. It's long-term, consistent responsibility and, ingrained habit patterns and behavior that are going to make the most people wealthy over time. It's a get rich slowly in a boring way type of approach, which most people want that, next hot stock tip, that, get rich quick overnight thing, whatever it is. That's not what I'm selling. That's not what I focus on. But, and that's where the coaching comes in too, by the way. When I talk about my sweet spot being, a combination of coaching and financial planning, I'm happy to help people if they're willing to lean into that process. But what I'm trying to get at though right now is that it's never too early and it's never too late to start getting a hold of your financial future, to regain control of your wealth, get your spending in control if that's what you need, get your money working for you in the best way possible. So what I'm really trying to communicate through this is that these things that may not seem connected, detailed personal finance, investments, financial planning, and, making your daydream into your day job, I promise you they're very related. And you talk to anybody, who's been teaching in this, Butch, Julieann, Nathaniel, Carly, so many other people, they had to learn personal discipline. They had to learn personal responsibility and how to be able to prioritize and make sacrifices based on what they knew they wanted. And the people that have, achieved their vision, who have accomplished a lot and had successful, businesses, ministries, influence, whatever it is, whatever way you want to measure success, a lot of them, I would say probably all of them, for anybody at a significant level, has learned how to make sacrifices and prioritize to defer gratification today for much better results in the future. And that's where I want to take us, having laid this groundwork in future sessions. And again, if this is a little too over your head, I apologize. Like I said, check out anybody, Dave Ramsey or whoever, who can help you with where you need to be. But the point of sharing this with you guys is that we all have choices and priorities in our lives. A budget is simply a list of priorities with dollar signs attached to them. I'll say that again. A budget is nothing but a list of personal priorities with dollar signs attached to them. So start thinking about what's really important in your life. Is it worth working those extra hours to have that bigger TV or that newer phone or that new car? Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but you should be thinking about those questions because there is a trade-off between time and money. And where I want to start taking us is to the point where you have more than enough to live on and you can actually start preparing for your future, and not just your future, but where it gets really exciting is when you can actually be helping to secure your children's future, and even better, your children's children's future, and on down the generational line, which is another thing we'll talk about. But for now, I just want to leave you with finding your sweet spot is really critical and important. That's usually, not always, but usually that's the first thing that I do when I work with people is get them clear on what they love, what they're good at, what makes them come alive, and how they're going to add the most value to other people. So again, check out Finding Your Sweet Spot Part 1 on the YouTube video. And then once people have identified and clarified that vision, What I really like doing is, okay, that's awesome that we got like these feel good things where like, yes, I've clarified my vision, my purpose. I'm really excited about this. I don't want people to just stop right there. You know, if that's as far as you get, that's, you know, better than nothing. But let's not stop there. Let's put a plan into place. Let's set some goals. Let's come up with a detailed plan. Let's execute that plan so that you can actually be living out your vision, doing what God made you to do. Or if, you know, if you're not a person of faith, just whatever it is that, you know, you feel you were put on this earth to do, or maybe you're not even thinking about it that deeply. You just want to be able to do, you know, things that are enjoyable and fun and not, you know, work at a terrible soul-sucking job. I could go into a whole other, you know, discussion about how deeply painful that was for me. And I know that's true for a lot of people, even people that are highly paid. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. And trust me, I've been in a place where I made a pretty good amount of money at a relatively young point in life, and it was absolutely not worth it. So wherever you are right now, if you're a high paid person who's deeply dissatisfied with your job, if you're someone who's struggling financially but has, you know, desire to get into a better place and start figuring out what makes you come alive, or maybe you know what makes you come alive, you've already clarified that vision, but now you need to start actually taking practical steps towards it, then that's, you know, that's the segue that we're kind of talking about here. Is once you've identified what your vision is, and again, that takes a while. We're going to be talking about this a lot more. Check out everybody else's videos on what they're saying about this stuff. But once you've identified that, you've got to start taking practical steps towards that goal. And like I said, for a lot of people, finances are holding them back. So I'd encourage you to start thinking more about what makes you come alive, you know, where your sweet spot is, how you can start operating from that sweet spot, and then start thinking about, you know, if you need to make some sacrifices or trade-offs, if it feels like walking out that vision and living that dream is so hopelessly far away from you that you can't even imagine it, start just taking little steps of what you can do to more effectively use your time, your money, and your energy and focus. And that will, I promise you, just like compound interest over time, as Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world, that will absolutely shock you how much of a difference that can start to, you know, make once it all comes together and it adds up. I've seen it very quickly in some of my clients' lives. It's amazing. It's super inspiring to see. That's what really lights my fire and makes me come alive, is seeing people being able to make progress towards the dreams and the vision that they have. And you are no exception. It's just a matter of making those choices and those priorities. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys. Check out the first video, Finding Your Sweet Spot Part 1. Review this if you need to. You can go to abetterwaypodcast.com/sweet-spot, and you can find the training and all the resources that come with that video. But, you know, just start thinking about what are some trade-offs you might need to make. And by the way, if you haven't already, I encourage you to go to visionpossible.net, our website. We've just put together what we call a vision spectrum quiz. So you can kind of see, you'll answer some questions, you get some custom curated content based on your answers and where you are. And that should give you some more specific directions and action steps to get closer to living out your vision. So do that. Make sure to like and follow our Instagram and Facebook pages, and on YouTube, subscribe and press the little bell icon so that it'll give you notifications when we go live or when new videos are posted. So once again, I'm Ryan Haley. I am so glad that you guys are tuning in. Check out visionpossible.net. Like, subscribe, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And we will see you next week